בעניין דברי רבינה, כי נוחש ושרץ הם שני ראשי התומס, שלא יסרצח ולא יסינב, שהם ראשם לכל עבירס ומידסרס כידוע. So we spoke about this last week, that the klippa has a left and a right, just like the kedusha. Because the klippa is only a dress, it's only a levush to cover the kedusha. So when a person misunderstands what's happening inside of him, when he acts out his midas, he ends up causing damage somehow. So lesirtzach is obviously the more difficult one, which is on the left side, which is claiming the midas adin, the midas agvura. And like we'll see, Reb Tzodok says that midah has no place in Klal Yisrael. And lesinav is on the right side, that a person misunderstands how to go about pleasure and he causes damage in that sense, and that's against the right side, that's against the midas chesed. So this is the shoyrish, he says, for all the midas rows, because we know that the body is animated only by two primary forces. One is the force of love, which is a force that brings a person closer. It's a force of connection. It's a force of a person realizing something real, something true, because at the essence we're all one, and that's the root of our love. The reason we love everything that we do is because we're the same being, and it's natural for a being to love itself. So the deeper a person's recognition of self goes, the more love he has for the things around him, for the people around him. So a person who identifies simply as himself, his ego is in charge of him, and he doesn't recognize that he's part of a bigger whole, his love is going to be basically primarily directed towards himself. As he notices that he's part of a family, if he becomes more conscious, then his love is going to start spreading to his family, and then to his community, to his city, to his state, to his nation, to whatever he identifies as self. His love is going to flow to that place and try to protect that self. And as a result of love, there's an emotion called fear. Fear is there to protect love. So as a result of a person loving something or wanting something or finding comfort in a certain thing, he's going to fear everything that's going to destroy that thing or going to cause damage to that thing. And that's the root of fear. So fear is there to protect love. But these are two primary motivations. So love, in its essence, is a unifying force. And fear, at its essence, is a separating force. The person wants to separate anything that could cause damage to the things he loves from happening, from taking place. And therefore, fear is always something that, at the base, is a force for separateness. And that's why it's not a Yiddish Amidah, because the whole concept of having Klal Yisrael, of having this nation, is to create a unifying force, to create one people. One people who recognize the unity of creation and the Creator, and therefore the primary motivation of a Yid is love. Now, because we're in Golus, because love doesn't have a proper manifestation in this reality, and that's why we don't have much love going on in the world right now, so even a person who has access to love might not know how to use it properly. He might not have the recipients for his love the way that naturally he would need, and that can cause a lot of complication, that can cause a lot of problems when he tries to manifest that love. But essentially, every thought that we have, every movement that takes place within a human being is motivated by these primary forces. And it's a good idea for a person to start getting to know himself, that he should be able to identify his thoughts and see what's motivating that thought, what's motivating that emotion. Is it the love, primarily love pushing him to that thought, causing him to manifest that thought, or is it primarily fear? And to do this, he simply has to take off the levushim from the thought. And the levushim are the words that it's going to manifest in. So for example, a person, he's afraid of something, right? He has a tremendous fear. Now, if he's willing to face his fears, the fears are going to come to him openly. They're going to tell him, I'm afraid of X, I'm afraid of Y, I'm afraid of dying, for example. A person has a strong fear of dying, he's afraid of dying. If he starts suppressing that fear, he says, no, I'm not afraid of dying. Why would I be afraid of dying? So then the fear will come back to him in a different levush, with different words. Now suddenly he's going to say, I'm afraid of getting sick. Now, it's the same fear that's still in him. It's not a new fear. But because he suppressed the fear in the first levush, in the way that it presented itself to him the first time, it's going to come to him again in a different levush. It's going to dress up differently and going to try to infiltrate. And this is how many times people dress their midas rois, sometimes in religious garments, like we saw many times throughout history that religion can become the face of untold evil. And that's because those people's base representation, those people's base feelings were rotten, were rotten to the core. They didn't fully have an understanding of who they are, and therefore they didn't arrive to the love of the unity that can be present when a person is spiritually developed. And therefore, as people hungry for power, tried to get more involved in religion, their evil inclinations were dressed up in the words of religion. So now instead of doing evil against God, they're doing evil for God, but it's the same evil. So, and that's the type of levush that we're talking about, that a person in and of himself, he can't identify what's happening inside of him because his thoughts are dressing themselves up for him, and he doesn't really know what's happening inside. And a person's expected, in order to find peace, to be able to take off all the levushim, that inside of himself he should know exactly what's happening to him. Even though in the place that he is or between the people that he is, he might not be able to be fully himself, but between him and himself he needs to be fully himself, so that he knows who he is, so that he knows how he is and what he is. And then these levushim that we're talking about here of l'sitzach and l'sinaf won't manifest, because these types of levushim of the sitra achra, they manifest through frustration. They manifest when the natural inclination cannot manifest itself, and there isn't enough wisdom to transform whatever is supposed to take place into something meaningful, into something useful. So it descends into a world of pain, into a world of suffering, into a world where people become separated and start arguing with each other and fighting with each other. And then eventually, at the deepest level of this causes wars between countries, because the two identities, like we've spoken before, the people identify with their nationality as if that's their unit, and then all their fears and all their aggression are there to dressed up as trying to protect their homeland, trying to protect their nation, trying to protect whatever. But at the end of the day, it's causing stress, it's causing fight, and it's causing at the end that people should die for something that could have been worked out with words. Because at the end of the day, every war ends with words. Agreements are made with words. So the show of strength, the show of force, the necessity to take it, to escalate it to a place where people physically get harmed, that shows an inclination within that's not calm, that's not peaceful, that's not really looking for the best option. And sometimes other people get dragged in, sometimes good people, kind people get dragged into violence because what's going on around them. So sometimes countries get dragged into violence in the same format. But at the end of the day, whoever is instigating violence is because he's dressing up whatever it is that he wants personally into a national identity, and then tries to protect that identity through warfare, through violence, through going through the sitra achra. Like we said, the tzad small of the sitra achra, the midas hadin of the sitra achra is l'sitzach. So these two negative implications are the two negative manifestations of the primary modes of motivating human being, of animating human being. And the two good ones are the chesed and the gevura. Chesed, to be kind, that's a primary force within a human being. That's olam chesed yiboneh, that the world only works through chesed. It only works if we chip in and we want to help and we're motivated. We've wired our brain in such a format that it receives pleasure from helping other people. And the tzad of gevura is the ability for a person to protect himself from all kinds of problems. Primarily just that he shouldn't walk into natural trouble, so that he knows to protect himself from the basic elements, from the extremes of weather, from the extremes of exhausting his body. These are the basic forces of gevura that a person needs to have the proper restraint in order to keep everything functioning properly, in order to keep a certain balance. So he says, Yediah der Ritzicha einer midas Yisrael. Yitzicha has no shaychus to Klal Yisrael, kmo shenem v'agivonim lo bnei Yisrael hermo, because they wanted to take revenge and they wanted to kill people as a revenge for people killing some of their people. So the fact that they wanted to kill in order to straighten the balance, the fact that they couldn't take an apology and they needed to actually go through with the violence, shows that they don't have a Jewish heart. They don't belong to our nation. Therefore it says v'agivonim lo bnei Yisrael, they don't belong to us. The Mitzoyer is a person who speaks evil, and the speech of evil shows thoughts of evil. Thoughts of evil indicate a mid of leisirzach. A mid of leisirzach manifesting into speech. So therefore, a Mitzoyer is nishtale chutz machne Yisrael. He doesn't belong in Klal Yisrael. He belongs outside. If he heals, if he gets the ways that he's learned from others, then he can come back in Machne Yisrael. Then he can become part of Klal Yisrael. And this tahara only comes to the Kohen. The Kohen can tell him that he is Torah, and that's because the Kohen represents the Midas HaChesed. So when the Midas HaChesed sees the Metzoira and it says this person has converted, he is no longer in the area of Leisirzach, he's no longer looking to hurt humanity, then he can be welcomed back into his community, he can come back to Machne Yisrael. So Tava is symbolized by the Tumah of Ziva. Ziva is when a person has a discharge, not while being intimate with his wife, but in fact the Ziva happens with what's called the Eiver Meis, when the person is not even aroused. And this means that a person doesn't know how to channel his energy of chesed. He doesn't know how to channel his pleasure in the appropriate way, where it can actually cause, it causes good things to happen on all sides. And the Tumah of Ziva means that a person doesn't have control over his channel of pleasure, and he doesn't know how to use it in the appropriate way. And this Tumah is Shchir Gam B'Yisrael, V'av Be'etesh Lo Yesh Tumah, Shom Rizal B'Ovim Moleh. That David HaMelech, when it happened to him, the story of Bathsheba, so David HaMelech says, Him B'Oven Cholalti V'chet Yechamas Ni'imi. With a sin, I was originally conceived, and with the other type of sin, my mother conceived me. So what he's trying to say is, there's a story of Yishai. We know Yishai was one of the 4 people who died, what's called Be'etir Shel Nochosh, meaning that they didn't commit any sins, these 4 people, but they died because of the original sin of the Eitz Hadas. So Yishai was one of those people, David's father. So the story of how David was conceived was that Yishai had a shifcha, and that night he wanted to be with the shifcha. But the shifcha invited David's mother in because she felt that it was wrong to do that behind her master's back. So therefore, the wife showed up instead of the shifcha, and that was the night that David was conceived. So David says, you know why what happened to me with Bathsheba happened? You know why I didn't have control over myself? Because originally when I was conceived in such a way that my conception wasn't pure, that my father's thoughts were not pure. And from here we learn that when Chazal speak about the etir shel nochosh, the eitz of the nochosh, what was the eitz of the nochosh? The eitz of the nochosh was to confuse a person in this area, in the area of pleasure, where you can be intimate with another person. The nachash came in and confused that area. And therefore, even though Yishai was a tzaddik that didn't die for any other cause, meaning he didn't get anything wrong in his life, everything he did exactly the way that he was supposed to. But when it came to this area, he also didn't know how to do it properly. And David HaMelech comes out from such a place. And we see this many times in the lineage of David HaMelech, before from Lot and the daughters and going forward with Yehuda, that there's something with this neshama that it always comes out in this way, because the neshama of Mashiach is said to be buried deep inside the klippos. It's buried deep within the areas that we think are bad, the areas that we think are wrong. That's where Mashiach's neshama is. That's where it fell into it, the chet of Adam Rishon. And all this avodah, all this progress that we've made over thousands of years, is to pull that neshama out from between the klippos. And therefore, the conception of that neshama over and over again has a shaykhis to areas that seem to us like they're wrong. And that's because at the end, it's his job, it's Mashiach's job to take out all these areas that we misunderstand and clarify to us what is the appropriate way. And this is going to be the tikkun for the chet of the nachash, that will actually know how to manifest this area in the appropriate way. What was the kavanah tchila? What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create? And how did he create it? And how does it really work? But until that's done, whenever we get involved with this area, it's an area that's open for mistakes and misunderstandings. So that's the area of Loisinov. That's the area of the right of the klipa, of the midas hachesed when it goes wrong. Masha'en ken etzicha, ein mokum letumah. Shezeh chelek akim, ib'em ein shaykh klal shum tumah. That when we speak about tumah, we're talking about something that has a proper manifestation, and now it happens to be in an improper manifestation. Then we say tumah. Masha'en ken by ritzicha, there's no concept of tumah by ritzicha, because it's not shaykh to Klal Yisrael. It's like by the Goyim. The Goyim don't have tumah like we have. The Goyim can't be tumah like we are because they don't have bichlal these different levels of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, the way that Chazal set it up for us. ואף מתקנוס חכום אין תמוסם כתומס בני ישראל שהם נקרא מקבלים תומה. A yid is called a makabel tuma. A yid can be makabel tuma or it can be tor. But by a goy there isn't these two sides even. There isn't that ability. מה שאין כן הם, בעצם הם מלאדם בטן עיקר הסחלוס אביוסם מיד תמאים כמו שזמן מוקם אחר. Because they're not working with the same Torah that we're working with in order to be metired the world, in order to be metired themselves, in order to recognize the true manifestation. So it's not shaykh the timah v'tahara the way that it's shaykh by us. Afa pi shem shorish kol timah marb timah boiling k'mod ein shaykhim kol avayris ben. Afa pi shem shorish l'chol avayris. So it says just like all the midas rois, we say they come from the goyim, but the goyim they're not mechiv to work on their midas the way that we are. The goyim only have the 7 mitzvahs of bnei noach. They don't have to get into all the details in order to purify themselves. So even though the source of the problems are from them, we don't expect them to do that work. That work was given to us, Klal Yisrael, in order to properly purify our minds, purify our hearts, so that we can tell what is the true manifestation of a human being, what it's supposed to look like. Tumah means that there's a potential here for purity, and it's not there yet. So we call it tumah. But when there's no potential for purity, there's no concept of tumah. לדובר שאין אמר בתומה ונפן את נוקם טהרה. קולשכן דמיד הטוב ומרובה שלי מוקם תומה, ומאקם אין אנוש מה שאוהב מדיב לתורי קולשכן ישראל. So Ravina was trying to make a kal v'chomer from a nochash. Trying to say, just like a nochash doesn't create tuma, and a nochash is worse because a nochash is roim on ritzicha, then kolshkin sheretz shouldn't show tuma because the sheretz is only shows on lesinov, and lesinov is a lesser problem than lesirtzach. Therefore, a sheretz shouldn't be metama either. And he says there, he wanted to make that kal v'chomer even further. That just like a goy, if he's over on divrei Torah, he doesn't get punished because he wasn't mitzvah in the first place. So kolshkin, a member of Klal Yisrael, he's much holier, then kolshkin he shouldn't get punished if he's over on divrei Torah. That's the kal v'chomer that Ravina wanted to make. וזה קל וחומר פריחי כדדוך ההוסם, למעשה קוץ בלי דעסו, ובליאל כקוץ מנד להם. So he's saying that Lamaise, we're not mekabel this kal v'chomer because we don't judge a goy as if he was over in the divrei Torah in the first place, because he doesn't have the ability to be over, because he doesn't have the ability to be any other way. And therefore, like the pasuk says, Rak eschem yadatim mikol mishpachos ha'adama, only you I know from all the families of the earth. Al ken efked alechem eskala v'nesechem. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives punishment to the ones that he knows better. YAKOV'S ben yirtze, right? Like Shlomo HaMelech says. A person doesn't punish other people's kids because he doesn't have any shaykhs to them. He's not trying to make them better. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he ingrained within us the ability to get punished because he wants us to reach a higher madraga. So when a person gets pegged to a higher madraga, it means that whenever he's not at that madraga, he feels out of place. He feels like he's incomplete. He feels like he hasn't done enough. So the pegging him to a higher madraga is what causes him to suffer. It's what causes him to suffer whenever he's not at that level. Mashenka is somebody who doesn't have those expectations. So even if he doesn't arrive to that high level, there's no pain for him. Adarabi, he feels proud that he's surpassed his level of expectation. He surpassed what he thinks he should be. So therefore, the pain comes as a way of teaching. It comes as a way of bringing us closer to our desired goal, to the place that we need to be. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives it dafke to those who are close to him. Like it says, B'kroi v'HaKodesh, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is medagdik v'tzadikim kechut ha'sa'ara. The closer a person gets to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it means that he more appreciates the perfection that's available. The more he appreciates the perfection that's available, he has to cleanse himself more in order to be able to reside within that perfection, in order to be able to accept that good that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give him. So the das is what causes a person to have potential. The recognition of who he is, the recognition of the ability of a human being to transcend all the different modes of survival that we're living within, and to actually see life from a proper perspective, to recognize what it really means, to be able to appreciate life without any specific manifestation of pleasure, without any specific cause, but to appreciate life for the mere fact of existence, and recognizing that the one that could create this, the one that can make this happen, the one that could make blood conscious, he is reliable to give you the proper reward that you deserve. He is reliable to make everything worthwhile at the end of the day. So even though now it might seem like it's all suffering, like it wasn't worth it, like life is too complicated and you can't make any hands and feet out of it, but if you look at what he's created, you'll see that whoever created it, that he has the ability to repay you, and he'll make sure that you feel whole. He'll make sure that you are convinced that it was worth going through whatever you went through until now. And this takes a certain type of das, that a person should be able to recognize that. So only the people who have the potential for that das, only the people who can potentially recognize this recognition, they will be punished for when they are at a lower level, because that's what's expected of them. Mashenken, people who are nimshal kabehemus nidmu, that they live strictly in their imagination, they only see what the senses present in front of them. Those people, they won't need to get punished because they don't have the potential to recognize this recognition. They don't have the ability to see and to appreciate with the das, and therefore they go through a different level of experience. Their nefesh is not so sensitive. Their nefesh doesn't realize the little differences that they have with reality, and they just gloss right over it. They just keep moving. So this is a difference in essence. So this difference in essence is what causes a person to decide or to naturally punish himself when he's below his natural state, when he's below the level that his nefesh deems perfect, when he's below the level that his neshama feels that this is the way a human being should be. So if he goes beyond that, then he won't have the suffering. But if he's below that, where everybody else is, because he has the sensitive neshama, because he has the potential for something higher, for something more, so for him, where everybody else is suffering. For everybody else, it might not be so much suffering, but for him it's suffering because he knows more, he understands more, he has an inclination for something deeper, for something higher. ואיסו, תלמיד אחד דוי לרב מאיר, שאל תחשב שדובר זה מדרגה זי של רב מאיר ותלמיד יבנה סויסר מדרגה סגדורי באמס הכל מים נביה. וכן אומר שתלמיד רב מאיר שנובר ממיונו היה אומר ארבו משמונה טעם, ארבו משמונה מיני תימס. So he's saying that Reb Meir had a Talmud that was able to say 48 different timim, and it says 48 different timim means 48 different tastes, 48 different descriptions, 48 different ways of explaining how all this goes with the truth, goes with reality. So you shouldn't think that this is just some kind of a pshetel that Reb Meir was able to make in order to pretend that things are okay, but that this was the true reality, meaning that this Talmud could explain it to a person in a way that he would experience that reality only. He would experience that life and the things that he thought were obstacles are actually solutions. And this obviously takes a tremendous wisdom to be able to put things in the proper perspective so that a person could see that everything that took place in his life was there to help him. Usually as we go along life, the further into it we are, if we start paying attention, the more we can notice how things that happened earlier in our life were setting us up for things that are going to happen later in life. We needed to know this because of that. We needed to know that because of what happened after. But while things are happening, we have no way of knowing. This is what the Ishbitz says on that the person could see, could understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu when it's already behind him. When he looks back at his life, he can look and he can see the events and explain them. You can't see ahead, because the reason for what happened today hasn't happened yet, so you don't know it. The only way you'll know the reason for what happened today is if you'll see tomorrow, if you'll see next year, if you'll see the next decade. So the answers for why things are happening now are in the future, and that's why we can't recognize them. The reason of why they happened are in the future. The way, how they came into being, is in the past. So the past will explain to you how you got yourself into a certain jam, but it won't explain to you why. The why is in the future. Kadosh Baruch Hu set it up because you need to know this, you need to experience this, you need to be at a certain level, at a certain place. And every day of our lives is we're adding something to a building that we've already built. Our spirit has been evolving and building from the day we were born. So every day, the spirit is defining itself more deeply, and it's getting to know itself in a way that it hasn't known itself before. And this is how we evolve, this is how we process, this is how we become who we are. So each step is important before the following step. It comes before this, whatever comes next. So he's saying that this Talmud of Reb Meir was able to give you 48 different taimim. So it says taimim means tasting. So just like our mouth has the ability to taste food, when we eat food, our mouth will tell us if it's salty, if it's sweet, and all the different properties of the food. The same way our heart has the ability to tell truth, has the ability to taste truth, has the ability to taste what's real and what's not real. So when something more true is presented to the heart finds a certain relief, it finds a certain recognition in that truth, if it goes in properly, if it identifies the truth properly. So this Talmud was able to give 48 different types of tastes. So it says if a person went through all these 48 levels of tasting what Reb Meir was teaching, then it would become a full kinyan in his heart. Then every part of him would know that that's true. So saying that this a person is not koine at once. He's koine this as he goes through. The more he looks for the truth, more and more of these steps fall into place. He starts realizing that what he knew before was not real, was not true. His mind was just creating an illusion. And then slowly he sinks into the truth deeper and deeper, because the truth is here already for all of us. The truth is hiding beneath the lie. So there's never a lie that can remove the truth. A lie is simply a concept that resides in the mind that doesn't allow that mind to experience the truth. So therefore, as a person starts looking for the truth, he comes deeper and deeper within himself to recognize that all the things that his mind thought were true are not true. And as he realizes that, he comes closer to recognizing the truth. The truth is not about the knowledge itself, but it's about the freeing of the mind so that the mind can be who it was created to be. So that the nature of the human being that was created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that was created within him, can start expressing itself in its appropriate way. And therefore it requires a peeling of all the klipot, of all the peels, of all the coverings that cover the mind from seeing itself for what it is. And this involves all types of different ways that people identify themselves as different things that they're not. So a person should imagine that if he lives 6,000 years ago when he was created together with Adam Arishon, he would still be the same person, but he wouldn't be able to identify with any of the things we identify with. There wouldn't be any bank accounts to identify with, and there wouldn't be any communities, and there wouldn't be any languages, and there wouldn't be any nations. So who is he then? Because he's still that same one today. He's not a different one just because there's other people around. He's the same one. But the other people around will cause him to misidentify himself. They will cause him, because of their natural tendency to control, their natural tendency to want to have the ability to tell other people what to do. And it's young, when people are young, this is important, but sometimes overdone. So people start giving their children identities from a very young age. When the child grows up, he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't have any natural answer to who he is. He only knows what he was told. I went to this school, I lived in this city, I lived in this house, and then I did this and I did that, and I got a degree, and this is my job. But all these have nothing to do with who he is. This is how society's been using him. But who is he? Who is he? Who is being used? Who is going through all these motions? That truth is hiding behind everything else that's been recorded in the mind. Everything else that we fill the mind with, that we develop the mind with all these practical survival modes so that it can survive. And the internal ability for a person to see the beauty of nature, to see the beauty of life, to recognize the gift of existence gets lost. That area is not developed. That area is not spoken to. That area doesn't take up much mind space or much manifestation. So whenever we do anything, whenever we give our time, it's a form of worship. Because when we give our time to something, we're developing our brain in that direction. So whatever we're busy with, that's where we're causing brain development. That's where we're causing our minds to bond and to think about and to dream about and to feel about and to care about. So when a person wants to create a strong energy within his life, when a person has tremendous importance in a certain area, for example, to finding the truth, it means that he needs to worship finding the truth. And worshiping finding the truth means designating time. Designating as much time as he possibly has available for this endeavor, so that in that time, he will develop his brain, he will develop his mind in that direction, so that his mind can become more and more steeped and more versed and more familiar with that subject, so that he can evolve. Just like a person would go to college to study a certain subject, and he would develop the knowledge over years in order for him to be able to really contemplate the deepest ideas of that knowledge, the deepest knowledge available on that subject. So the same way, when a person is looking for the truth, he needs to designate time to look for it. He needs to designate time with himself to try to understand himself, to try to recognize who is he, beyond what his parents told him, beyond what his teachers told him. Who is he as a human being? What does it mean? And what type of experience is he expected to have over here? And the answers, all these answers are only within. All the books and all the words in the world can do nothing more than point you in the right direction, because the words will always be filtered through the mind. So again, we're back to the mind. We're always in the mind. We can never leave the mind. So our mind is our interface between us and reality. And when the interface is not properly toned, is not properly developed, then our whole version of reality is not proper, is not appropriate, is not real. And that's when we cause damage to ourselves and others. So a person needs to recognize that spending time is a form of worship. And people used to worship, they used to designate most of their time to the important things of life, to pondering the real questions of life. And today we worship, for the most part, money. We spend most of our hours to make money, and therefore the money-making part of our personality is extremely developed. Everybody is very smart, very wise when it comes to money. Everybody is a wise guy. Everybody knows all the tricks and how to save some here and how to make some there. But when it comes to actually contemplating what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, not what the people created, there's the time that we spend in that area has been diminishing and diminishing over a long period of time. So people used to designate their entire lives, we had Kahanim, that was the only thing they were busy with. And not only our nation had Kahanim, every nation had Kahanim. And the Kahanim were busy with contemplating the real meaning of life, contemplating the body and the mind and the connection between the two, and the soul, and how do we get the mind to go to higher places, to deeper places? How do we turn on the machine? How do we create cheshik within a person? How do we create love? Because all these things are within our nature, and they're available to us if we can learn the right buttons to push. But instead, all this happens by happenstance. It happens based on how important it is to making money. If it's important to making money, we'll invest in it. If it's not important to making money, then we won't bother. That's the philosophy of today. That's the mind of today. You would assume that people are so miserable today, they're in so much danger for survival, that they spend 95% of their time on survival. But the reality is just the opposite. Thousands of years ago, when survival was difficult, when people were being killed, those people were still wise enough not to focus on the areas of survival and to focus inside, to know what's true, to recognize that the one who created all the stars, the one who created all the galaxies, he must have had a better vision of this experience than the one that we're creating for ourselves. So they had the ability to look deeper, even in those dire circumstances. Today, when everything is so easy and everything is so comfortable, we have to work harder and harder and harder for stuff that is completely unnecessary, for things that we don't really need, except because we rely on other people's opinions to figure out if we're okay. If we rely on other people's opinions to figure out if we're okay, then our psychological survival, our ego, depends on having all this money to do what everybody else is doing. Otherwise, we don't feel adequate. We don't feel like we deserve to live. So this is completely upside down from where we started. This is completely upside down from where the Torah is coming from. The Torah is telling us that the focus should be internal, because then life has been designed in such a way that we will be able to have everything we want. There will be a bracha. Kadosh Baruch Hu says that there will be a bracha in the things that grow. There will be a bracha in the earth. There will be a bracha in the food. There will be a bracha in the rain. There will be a bracha within our bodies, so that when we eat, we'll be satiated, we'll be happy, we'll be calm, we'll be peaceful. And when we discuss any types of subjects with each other, we'll enjoy it, because we'll be present, we'll be available, we'll understand what a gift, what a privilege it is to be on this planet. But if we go in the other direction, then as much as we have nothing. Sometimes the more we have, the less we have. Because with more comes more worry. With more comes more trying to figure out how to use it and how not to use it and where to invest it and where to keep it. And before you know it, instead of the man owning the money owns the man. So the Torah is trying to teach us that the only place where a person can actually make progress is within the mind. All the money is just leverage on the mind. But at the end of the day, it's the mind that gives the experience to the one who lives, not the money. And somebody who has the proper mind, he can enjoy himself without money. Somebody who doesn't have the proper mind cannot enjoy himself with any amount of money in the world. And that's the message of the spiritual. That's the message of a person taking care of his neshama. And if people would live like that, then they would never get upset for a lack of anything, because they would understand that getting upset is hurting their neshama. Getting upset is disconnecting them from their neshama. It's like the Zohar says, there's nothing a person could do that's worse than getting angry. Nothing. When a person gets angry, he loses all access to his neshama. His neshama leaves, because when a person gets angry, he loses his ability to think rationally. When a person can't think rationally, then he lost access to his ability to manifest as a human being. And Arizal goes on for a long time, saying that a person has no place doing any spiritual avodah to start working on his spiritual development if he can still get angry. Because the higher he will go, when he gets angry, the worse it will be. Because it removes him from himself. It removes the one that he's working for, the one that he's developing, leaves when a person gets angry. And something else takes his place. Something else that's not pleasant. Something else that doesn't like humanity. It doesn't even like the person that it's using. So when we interact with anger, it's like we're interacting with the Samach Mem himself. This is at the core, this is at the source of all our evil manifestations. All our bad midas, Lesirtzach is obvious, right? The Metzoira of Lashon Hara, obvious. It comes from a form of anger, whether it's a passive-aggressive anger, or it's an outwardly aggressive anger. All types of anger are at the root of negative manifestations. They're at the root of a person not benefiting himself and others, not benefiting his life, not benefiting reality. And this is sometimes deeply ingrained in our behavior. It's because of the type of lives we live, where everything is more important than the person. So it's very easy to get angry, because if money is so important, and now something happened where money was lost, where money wasn't gained, then the natural inclination will be to get angry. But it doesn't mean that it's natural to get angry, because it's not natural to think of money in that way. This is artificial. This is programming. This is kishuf. Somebody, by observing other people who were wrong, we learn to value money more than its value is. It's not really that valuable. But we think it is. We think it's more important than what's going on inside of us. We think it's more important than our mood, and it's not. So when we make that exchange, when we give away our mood, we give away our neshama, we give away our spiritual currency because of a mishap with money, for example, so then we show that we don't understand, we don't appreciate the gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us within. We think that there are outside things that can help us more. And obviously, the angry person is not going to enjoy his money, because his problems are within. His problems come way before he gets to the money. So at the source of where a person gets frustrated, that's the place where he can make the most gains. That type of transformation will eliminate from all his manifestations, from all his different parts of his personality, from all his different moods, from all his different behaviors. They will remove the negativity. They will remove, if a person could clean anger from himself, then that's the easiest way into the yichud. And this is what it means to have shalom. So shalom, when we speak about it between countries, we're saying that there shouldn't be wars. Shalom, when we speak about within a person, we're saying that there shouldn't be anger. Anger is the opposite of shalom. And anger is, when we speak about anger, it's a strong manifestation of anger, but even a slight frustration is also a form of anger. So people who meditate deeply and they really try to gain access to bliss, because when a person gets to bliss, then he can really contemplate the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and appreciate his existence. So they recognize that each programming within the mind that causes resistance, that causes frustration of any sort, of any form, even if it's completely minute, it already disturbs the ability of a person to find peace. Until he won't work that thing out, even if he'll work hard and he'll find peace for a moment, as soon as he'll get a little bit frustrated, the peace is gone. Can't find it anymore, because his brain has been taken over by a foreign entity, by somebody that's working against him. And this is a very high madraga. This is why, after the Chorban Beis Hamikdash, we weren't zocheh to nevuah, because people couldn't gain access to those happy emotions that are necessary in order for a person to contemplate the divine in its appropriate manner. Because these levels of happiness, these levels of joy, they come from deep in the future. They come from a time where people will already know how to act and how to interact. So Nevi'im, they used to try to gain access to Olam Haba while still in this world. They used to try to gain access to the happiness and the bliss while they were still in the middle of all the turmoil. And the better they were at doing that, the higher they can get, the more they can perceive the truth. Because the truth is visible then, from a place of happiness, from a place of joy. The truth is not visible from a place of suffering. When a person suffers, he cannot perceive the truth, like we see by Yaakov Avinu. That for the 22 years that Yosef wasn't home, and he thought that all was lost, and he was sad, he couldn't gain access to the truth. So the Nevi'im used to try to go into mindsets that belong to the future. And they would use all kinds of mechanisms to remove themselves from the present state of life, from the present state of reality, and try to experience what it's going to be like to be a human being in thousands of years from now. Because from that place, from that perspective, we can see the truth. Those people will have the wisdom to know the truth. So therefore they used to use music, for example, like the pasuk says, Vahi kenagen hamanagen vati olav ruach Hashem, that the ruach Hashem will be in his order as he was listening to music and going into joyful states and going into areas that belong to the perfect person, that belong to a society where people are going to actually support each other and know how to interact with each other and themselves. And through entering those states, they were able to bring messages to the current state of humanity, saying how it's right or how it's wrong, what they're doing properly and what they're not doing properly, in order to gain access to these states, so that all of humanity as a whole can gain access to these states of joy and bliss. So we should all be zocheh that we should be able to find on the individual level our joy and our bliss, to be able to see the truth, and through that humanity as a whole will come to see the truth and come to have sosem v'simcha b'vias gol tzedek v'her b'yameinu.